Hi, Phil. It's so nice to see you. Look at us connecting our worlds together from one side of the coast to the other side of the coast.
That's right. But we're connected
I'm
to
on the
the
East
cosmos.
Coast. Where are you? I'm on the East Coast. Where do I find you?
On the other side, on the West Coast.
Very interesting. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Me too. I mean, we got a little bit of an appetizer about our discussion before we began. So now
Oh,
really, I'm really, I feel like I'm a little bit on fire with the ideas that we discuss, which is great.
yeah, it's always nice because we talk about so much before we get on the call, and I never know what we'll end up talking about because we don't see each other for the week before. We just kind of jump in and kind of talk about random things, but we were having a very interesting conversation about I said I appreciate you. And I'll say sometimes I'm wondering if we're appreciating the male as much as we need to be, or we could be, because we have to appreciate every human being, I'll say right now. Every human being. So I appreciate you. But it is interesting because you are a man.
Right. And I absolutely appreciate that. And, I think the more that we can, distinguish ourselves by gender and age, by cultural background, the more there is to celebrate. That's our unique perspective, and it's not better or worse than any other perspective, but it's part of a tapestry of ideas that are constantly interconnecting and building something that's greater than its parts.
Well, I keep on thinking about it like this. I'm a white woman, right? And so I can't change that. I mean, I guess I can, right? I mean, I guess I could, right? In our society right now, we can. Well, this is actually really interesting. I've thought about this a lot. Do you know the story? So you can change your gender, right? You could change your label of your gender. You could do things to change your gender. But okay, this was so interesting. Do you remember there was a woman? She was a woman who was a white woman, and she actually felt like she was black, and she
Mhm.
ended up having black, like she met a man and had black children, and she very much felt like she was a black woman. She had an afro, like she created an afro. She went to college. She said she was a black woman, and she lived as if she was a black person. She identified as a black person. And I think about this so often. And she ran the NCAAP in her community. She did so many things. And she was proud. She wanted to be a black woman. And lo and behold, she wasn't. And she got canceled completely for it. And I just thought, how come we can cancel some people and not other people, right? Like she identified with that. And maybe she was in past lives. I mean, I don't know. And her children were. I mean, her children were, but she kind of did look like she looked like she was not white. And
Mhm.
they torched her. I mean, her whole life was ruined and she was ousted from the community. And she felt very much part of that community. Anyway, just an
Mhm.
interesting thing is that I keep on thinking of the word perfect, right? And if we're born a certain way, there's only so much we can do. So if you're a man, you're a man. Should you I don't know. You can't
Right.
really, I mean, yes, you can change it, right? There's fine. Society says you can change it, but should we have to want to like or I mean, it's just an interesting question. I'll say to you, it's a very interesting question about liking ourselves.
Right. And I'm not about to bash myself because I'm a man, even though I can feel sometimes that there could be that tendency. It's not overt, but there can be times where I can feel that way. I'm, you know, I'm I I wouldn't do it to people based on gender or age or any of those things. But all of these things are very triggering.
I
in
know
our
it's very
culture.
triggering.
They're
Well, and
so
we're having a Scorpio moon today, so of course we're going to talk about something triggering. Like
right.
we're meant to be talking about something that's pretty uncomfortable. But Phil, I was thinking about? I was thinking about when I first called you and I was like, I like love Phil and I want to do this with you. And I was thinking, I'm a woman and you're a man, and I hope he doesn't take it the wrong way that I so love him. And it was fun, right? So even that was an interesting conversation. It's like
Right.
I can be very fascinated by you and interested in you and want to move forward with you in a way, but it's not in a sexual.
Right.
But I was like, I hope he doesn't take it the wrong way. So that's an interesting conversation about the whole man woman conversation too, right? It's like I'm
There,
blushing for people that are listening because it's true. Like, can women and men be friends? There's that natural. Anyway, it's just an interesting question. But I remember saying to you, I hope you don't take it the wrong way, but I really think you're wonderful.
thanks. And thank you, Courtney. Thank you so much. But think about all the comedy and drama for thousands of years that have been created because of this. There's the battle of the sexes. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It's not the people who were in those situations 1,000 years ago and writing funny plays about it, we're still doing it today.
Wait,
And
my
so,
father sent something to me. Wait, you'll know the show probably. I mean, you're a little younger than my dad, but hold on. And I was like, this is so genius. I had never seen the show. Hold on. He sent me the show and it was comedy and it was about like females and men and wait, can I don't know what the name of the show was. It was like an old time show and the guy wanted to go fishing. It was the funniest show. Like, oh, what was the name of the show? I can't remember the name of the show. It was a man and he wanted to go fishing and he made his wife hang up on their call and she's like, "Oh, you're going to pay attention to me." He's like, "Oh, yes, I'm going to pay attention to you." And then he got a call to go fishing. I don't know. It was very funny, but it was
and he
about the
pays.
relationship between a man and a woman and it was so funny because it was maybe 60 years ago and it could be today. And it was
Yeah.
this the ridiculousness between the man and the woman. The man wanted to do what he wanted to do, and the woman wanted her to do what she wanted him to do.
And we can't neutralize this. I mean, and I don't think we're meant to. We can't put a politically correct blanket over it and you know pretend it's not there, because I think pretending it's not there is more offensive because it detracts from our qualities, our the things that make us who we are.
Yeah, and I think we're now at a point where there are we all well look, we have okay, because I've been maybe we could talk about this because I think this is so interesting. So David, who listens, so thank you, David. He was asking, he like doesn't know if he believes in astrology. And he said, you just make it could be based on anybody. And I was like, I don't think so. It really is. So each of us have planets in our chart, and there are all masculine and feminine planets. So we each have masculine and feminine in us, right? But is there an innate, but I do think there's an innate difference. Like if you, not always, and I don't have boys, I have girls, but I do see that there's a difference between what boys are interested in and what girls are interested in. It pretty like my girls are very comfortable just hanging around the house and doing nothing. And then anytime there's a boy here that visits, they don't want to sit around the house and lay around the house. They always want to be moving. And I was thinking that's different. There is something, and I'm not saying I don't have a girl that kind of moves around a lot, but we're very happy. We get to sit in this house all weekend long. And everyone I know that has children that have boys, they can't. They cannot sit around the house. They have to go and do something because their boy will literally not be very happy. So is that, I don't know.
I think that's energy. That is energy. That's the feminine energy and masculine energy. I think that's a perfect example of it. And even saying that, I hope people don't think that I'm trying to say that one is superior to the other. I don't believe that at all. I never did. But these energies are complementary. They interact with each other as they're meant to. If they didn't, if they didn't have complementary qualities, they wouldn't work the way they do. There has to be this uniqueness, just like light is different than dark. It's it's the dichotomy that brings the energy, which is life affirming.
Well, there's like
It's incredibly positive.
it is really positive. And how about if, yeah, you need the opposite. I mean, if you even astrology is all opposites, right? It's like the balance of the two and having how to get it right. So, I mean, how do you get the feminine and the masculine right in all of it, right? Within everybody.
Mhm.
But there is an interesting, and I'm not saying that there's not exceptions to the rule, because there's always exceptions to the rule. But I will say to you, you ever see why women get mad at men? This is a stereotype and people are not going to like it, but okay, there's this book. It's called like Why Men Love Bitches. Did you ever hear of this book? It's like the most popular book. And it's brilliant. It is brilliant and the stupidest thing you've ever read ever. And it tells you like how to get a guy. It's like so simple. You just have to be interested in what they're saying,
Yes.
ask them questions.
Yes.
You have to agree with them. You have to say yes. And it's like very simple and it's very instinctual. It's a very instinctual book, actually. And it sold millions and millions of copies. But if you ever realize why women get mad at men, it's because they're not understood. Like he doesn't understand why I'm so upset about this.
Hmm.
Are women naturally more emotional? And does that make us better or worse? No, I actually think it makes us intuitive and brilliant and
Hmm.
interesting. And
Hmm.
maybe, maybe that's the gift. People just said that's not a good thing in business, but that actually is a good thing in business because you need to be intuitive.
Right. And I think men are always puzzled and intrigued, but also fascinated by that. They're they're they get drawn into it, and it's perfectly fine. They want to understand, they want to know, but I think there's, you know, their temperament is just different. Their thinking process is different. Not better, not worse. But I think it's
But I have a
magical.
question for you. I think it's magical too. You said something that that was so fascinating to me because I think today, especially, we're actually being today, actually, with the way the planets are in the sky it's a question. How about if no one wanted to be better than anybody else? That everyone just be the best that they can be, right?
Mhm.
And there is no, why do we have to have anyone better than another person?
Right. I don't.
Is that what it was? Because you said something really interesting, and I think I think there's something to dissect here. You said, I think there's a difference between men and women, and not that I think that men are better. And I think that's such an interesting comment because I would never think that you would think that.
No, I wouldn't. I don't, but I
Was
just
that the
assume.
belief back in the day? Like, so where, okay, where do you think that came from? Let's say you had a comment like that and it came from the ethers, right? You just said something like that because maybe there is some belief or man-made concept that people believe that. Does that make sense? I don't know.
No, I know exactly what you mean. The reason I said that is because I think when you're trying to say that there's a difference between men and women, I think if a man says it, it can be interpreted as they're not equal, one is better than the other. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're not equal, but one is not better than the other. They're perfectly aligned with each other. They bring out the best in each other and they push you into growth.
Yeah. Well, the
Without those
opposite.
changes, there'd be no growth.
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's like if you're like say if you're married, right? If two people are too similar and they don't have a if and we'll use if they don't have as much conflict, they're usually people don't stay together because you don't have that growth that you need. So the opposite or even the things that are difficult about not understanding the other person become the greatest gifts of the
Mhm,
relationship.
mhm,
If everything's just easy, if we were the same,
mhm.
there would be no growth. So I think that's an interesting thing to think men, women, how I mean, I would think if you go to schools at a very young age, you could see the difference between, well, my daughter was a teacher with boys and she was good with boys. And, and she would say there's just a very big difference. There's a very big difference at a very early, like she could see it. They were very different. That's why
Right.
they say all boys schools and all girls schools actually work because you could teach to how they learn, how they experience things.
Mhm. Yeah, and girls have a much more mature awareness of things than boys
Yeah,
at
and
each
their
stage.
frontal lobes, like girls' frontal lobes develop much earlier.
Yep,
Like a boy's frontal lobes don't develop till they're 24, literally.
yep,
And so you wonder why boys do crazier things at
yep.
20 or 21 than the girls do, right? You think about like fraternity hazing and all of that and what they could do, right? It's partly that they're low that I and maybe it's meant to be that way. Maybe it's so that they take more risks, they take more chances because they're not really worried about the consequences. I don't know. That's kind of fascinating to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there is a difference. I mean, but there's nothing wrong with the difference. It's okay.
No. And
It's,
because I keep on thinking, like, I wrote this essay. I didn't do anything with it. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm white. I can't change that. Right. I can apologize for it. And I really mean it. Like, I think the Oponoponos, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And so I do Oponopono work a lot of times if I have nothing to do with even the situation, but I better like myself because I can't change this. This is it. This is as good as I'm getting. Right. I'm going to get older. I'm going to get saggier. And I don't want to feel guilty about being something because I am something.
and I don't want to feel guilty about being a man, you know. That's
And I don't think
and
anyone really wants us to feel guilty. That's the thing. I don't think it doesn't support anything. It doesn't make our lives better.
yeah, I just think that there's, the political correctness can go to extremes and it can make people afraid to express themselves. And it's a different kind of oppression. If
No.
if you're made to believe that, your whatever qualities you have are the same as everybody else's qualities, exactly the same, no difference. That's I don't think that's a
Well, each
way.
person is like you look at a butterfly, right? Or a snowflake. There, there's not one snowflake that's alike. There's not one butterfly that's alike. So although humans have similar things that we'll experience, there's no two humans. There's no two humans that are exactly alike. DNA wise, how they're going to grow up, how they were raised. Like two people could be born on the same exact day at the same exact time, and they have different environments. Their situation will be very different.
And they have very unique temperaments and physical characteristics, and those are the things that need to be recognized. They they can't be ignored.
Yeah, and maybe appreciated. Like I think maybe that's like the whole message of this Pluto Aquarius energy. How do we like ourselves for our differences? How do we like being who we are and like ourselves for what makes us different? Because I mean, maybe that's where the changes come in. I actually just heard this. Did you hear this? This is so interesting. Who was it? Was it who created the light bulb?
Edison,
Was it? Yeah. So he was considered, they said he was like, he went to school and they said he was retarded. Like they called him names. They said he couldn't learn anything, that he couldn't, it was a really true story. And they said he pretty much will not figure out how to do anything. And he created the light bulb. It's like, what, I don't know. Be careful who you believe.
yeah, he it took, I'm sure took a tremendous amount of willpower for him not to conform, not to let society tell him that he was handicapped in some way. He had hearing loss, I know that, but if he had conformed, he never would have reached his full potential, and we all would have suffered for it.
Yeah. That's what I keep thinking. I keep on thinking about how, I don't know, I think that we're supposed to be uniquely ourselves. I'm very good at that. I kind of always beat by my own drum. I've done my own thing. I've never really, I always seemed like an outsider, but I do think that everybody feels like an outsider. I used to think it was just me that feels like an outsider. I think some people are just better at faking it.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? I think that if you actually talk to most people don't feel like they fit in. That's my theory. My theory is this, that is why people drink. That's why people drink and they do drugs because so you ever go to okay, you ever go watch like a group of people at a party? They're always drinking because they also don't feel like they fit in. So they're like, well, we'll just drink so we could match the energy together. And I think some people
Yeah.
are just better than others at pretending that they fit in. But how if we
Yeah.
all decided that we went in and we were like, yeah, I don't feel like I fit in. Everyone would it'd be interesting to see what the differences were
Hmm.
than the similarities.
Right. And yeah, there's just an uncomfortableness about, you know, completely embracing your uniqueness. And that when you're interacting with other people, I think there's a pressure to conform, to put a lid on your uniqueness. And of course, drinking and drugs helps you suppress all of those things.
It literally puts a lid on it. Like I think of like alcohol and it like dampens the light in you, right? It in the beginning you feel like you have a sip and it's like woohoo.
Mhm.
And then afterwards it just makes you lower. It's a very interesting, but it is interesting to see. I can't believe that this has become such a topic that is so something we're so have to be so careful with talking about.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
just know that I have girls, so I've always said this is not as a big deal for me, but I said if I had a boy and they were saying this stuff about my boy, like I don't, everyone keeps on saying it's men that caused, okay, I'm going to say something really controversial. I'm not going to like it. Everyone keeps on saying that it was men that have kept women down. I'm going to say something that most people won't say, and it's going to make me very uncomfortable and maybe not liked. I have experienced that it's a lot of times women that keep women down.
I've heard that before many times.
You know, and listen, I will say this. I'm so grateful that the Me Too movement happened because that was the way a man did keep women down. There was very much that I've experienced that. And I remember thinking, I hope for I was like, oh, maybe my prayers came true. I hope by the time my children become older, that somehow that does change because that was so societal. Do you want to hear a story? I'll tell you a story. So, you know, the whole Harvey Weinstein thing when that came out, Donna Karen was interviewed. And you know, she's like a real feminist, Donna Karen. She's a very spiritual woman. You kind of look up to her. This is a long time ago. And she said, I will never forget it. Bothered the crap out of me since I heard it. She said, you know, what do you expect? Like, so she said, like Harvey Weinstein was getting in trouble. She said, what do you expect when women dress the way they do? And I thought, and I remember thinking, oh my God, did she just say that? She's a designer. If I want to walk around naked, that doesn't give anyone the right to touch me, right? So, but she was a designer. And I had to sit with this for a long time. It wasn't her fault. She was trained to believe that somehow it was the woman's fault, right? That's what she believed. But except for every time there was a situation where the man had power, you think of Epstein, you think of Harvey Weinstein, there was always a woman that opened that door for them. There was a secretary that was the safety keeper in, I think, Harvey Weinstein. And what's his name? It was what's her name? The partner?
Giselle Maxwell?
I think so. She was the one that got most of those girls. She was the one that went out and got them. It was a woman who put them in that situation. The man might have done something, but there was a woman behind it. Isn't that fascinating? I didn't even think about that now that I said that.
Yes. Yeah, it's,
It wasn't just, it's just interesting. And right. And I'll say to you, Donna Karen, that's the generation she grew up in. She didn't know any different. It was her programming. So is it really her fault that she said that? No, she just, that's how it's always been. But that's
my
the only
mother's,
way, I think. And you even go back to Bill Clinton and they were sexual people. He was a sexual person. He was a sexual person. They knew exactly what they were doing when they put that girl in that room. He's a very sexual man. He just is I'm sure he still is a very sexual man.
right. Yeah, my mother had something similar to say about, you know, the whole Me Too movement, and, her position, I think, was generational. And that is, well, you know, if you want to be an actress, you're
You had to do
pushing
that.
you're pushing your body on everybody, but that's her bias.
No, no, no,
That's
no. Kim Cattrall. So Kim Cattrall, like 15 years ago. So you know who I'm talking about? The girl from Sex and the
yeah,
City. She was on Howard Stern. I think it was 15 years ago. And she had this conversation. That was the only way you could get in like, that was just, there was the couch. And if you want to be in the industry, a lot of people, this is what you do. And you get to choose. I mean, again, it's wrong. But it was such a normal conversation. She said it like it was nothing. This was
yeah,
15 years ago. I remember it very vividly. And I thought, yep, that's why I wouldn't want to be in that industry because it's hard. I'm not saying everyone did do that because there are people that didn't have to do that, but it's
right.
kind
It's
of if you had no choice.
right. But I think that's the bias, that there was somehow an acceptance of it, even though it's
But by
completely
acceptance of
immoral.
women too, women accepted it. Do you know
Right.
a story? Do you know this other story of Suzanne? This is an interesting story. Do you know the story of Suzanne Summers? Okay,
No.
you're gonna love this. So Suzanne Summers was on Three's Company. It was a really successful company. It was really great, right? So
Yep.
she decided that she doesn't think that, okay, Suzanne Summers, like the girl from, okay, this is actually so cool. I ended up going down this whole rabbit hole. She decided that it wasn't good that Jack, that Jack Ritter, right? The guy was getting paid so much more. So she came up and she said, listen, I think that me and this other girl should be paid the same amount. We should be the same amount. Okay, are you sitting down? They decided that's not happening because Laverne and Shirley had just done something very similar, and then they got paid a lot of money. And they're like, we're not letting women do this. We're not letting women do this. Do you know what the kicker was? It wasn't John Ritter that had a problem with it. It was the other woman. The other woman said, no, she's wrong, and we shouldn't be paid that much. We're just women. And I'll take this smaller amount. And she did. And within a year, Suzanne Summer was off the show.
Right.
And then that was like they were going to give the women a lesson. Now, who's to say that it was just men up there? I don't know. There could have been women up there too, but it was that woman didn't stick by her. That woman threw her under the bus. And lo and behold, she ended up doing like Thigh Master. She made so much money. But she was like a real game changer on like the whole hormones, the whole woman's thing. We should look at her chart. Yeah. But it was another woman who was like, no, and then really went off on her. And then no one asked for another raise equal amount to men until Roseanne Barr, I think it was 8 or 9 years later, because everyone was scared that they would get fired.
So this is exactly the bias. What lesson was she supposed to learn? Please, somebody tell me. Why would you say to a woman, you need to learn your lesson? You would never say that to a man. What? Because there is no lesson to be learned. She's looking for equal
Well, think
pay.
about this. Think about this. If women stood together back then, right?
Right,
If women stood back together, women, they would
right,
need women. Then you would have like Laverne and Shirley, they were together. They were two women together and they became powerhouses,
right.
but they were together. Years later, you see Friends, they were together, but they were girls, three women that stuck together, didn't I mean, yeah, like what lesson are you going to learn? But think about it. You needed a woman on the show. So if women had come together and said, listen, we're worth
Right,
it. We're
right,
worth being paid that. It would be a very different world way back when.
right. But they had an awful lot to overcome externally and internally because they had to be brave enough and be firm in their convictions and be love themselves enough to say, this is unacceptable. Please, this is not right, and I won't stand for it. And
True with men too. I mean, you watch men all the time, right? Not loving themselves, not knowing their value. I mean, you see people, both men and women, is it really what we believe about ourselves? Like is pay grade okay, let's say now, is pay grade something to do? Would a man be more apt to ask for a raise than a woman? If someone
I
knew
think
their
it,
value, wouldn't they get paid their value because they would say, I'm worth it.
yes, but I think there is a bias here as well because I think men are raised to stick up for themselves and demand the raise that's expected of the man. Women are not raised that way, or they, at least they weren't.
Yeah, and I wonder if that if it could change. Yeah, yeah, and well, but I also think that okay, there's a difference between a man. You ever see a men and women? You could tell me this. Maybe it's not like the man. You ever notice that if the man's angry or said something, they just get into a fight with another man, and it's over. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's your experience. And women,
yeah,
it's like sits there, and it's like they don't tell you what they really feel, and they're just angry at you.
yeah,
It like
yeah,
I don't know. It's so maybe there's just maybe if we would take on some of the traits of the masculine, that's the
yeah.
gift. Maybe instead of making it wrong, and we could see how we could each take on more traits if we're maybe we're jealous of something that men do, and maybe we could be more like them in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do think there's an interesting thing with women. I guess it like maybe for lifetimes there wasn't enough room for women, right? Well, even men, right? If you think about the fact that okay, I keep on thinking of Eris, and the story of Eris is that she throws the apple, and then the women, three women go after it. Yeah, and one of the women that went after it was being cheated on by her husband by a woman. It's a very interesting thing of like why we think there's not enough room.
Right. So yeah, and so again, it's interesting that you talk about guys actually coming to blows and then letting off steam and forgetting about it. Absolutely true. But again, there's this bias because can you imagine if there was a bar brawl of women, just women getting into a bar brawl? It would be a headline in the news and it would not be looked upon. It would be looked upon as an aberration, you know, whereas guys can have bar brawls, you know, every night of the week if that was what they chose to. No one would blink an eye. But so that's the cultural bias. It's which is, you know, it's
Okay,
okay
do you think of the
for
bias
guys to do what.
from what we learn from TV? Do you think it's like so? Let's say somebody was born. Let's say you had two kids, or you had all these kids that were born. They didn't watch any TV. They didn't have any outside. What would happen? Would they naturally do that? Versus, it's an interesting question. Yes, probably, right? Like instinctively, there would be a difference, maybe. Or if no, if they weren't, because women aren't to say if it's the idea that women aren't taught to, well, we were taught very differently. We were taught to be good, be quiet, kind of stay silent, right? But I kind of think all kids were at that age. Like my boys that were friends with them, they were not like talking either.
Yeah, I think it's, you
Like,
know,
did
I
you
think
get raised where you had a big opinion in your house, or did you tell your mother, say, like, just shh?
no, we had to be obedient. But I just think, you know, these things accumulate as you grow up. And again, it can be overt messaging or subtle messaging, but and then there's the the peer pressure of the people that are around you reinforcing these things. Uh, so they're hard to overcome.
Yeah, you would never, yeah. But I do think it's interesting about the letting off steam, and I guess being straight, being honest, having honest conversations, right? Saying to someone, like, you just hurt my feelings. Like, that's like the punch, right? Like, you hurt my feelings. Well, girls are very interesting. And I think there's a difference between girls and boys. Girls are there. Did you ever see the movie, the TV show Mean Girls? You know what Mean Girls is?
Yeah.
So it was based on this girl who wrote a book. Do you know that? And she also wrote a book about boys too. So that'd be interesting to see how she saw boys and girls differences. But there's always this group of girls. And in order to get power in the group of girls, the trick is to leave somebody out, which actually works in boys too, right? So it's like they leave somebody out. That's where they get the power because, oh, they're anyway. So I don't know. Does that happen? I think that does happen with boys too, now that I think about it.
Yeah, you don't want to be left out, whether doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. You don't want to be left out of the group. So, and again, guys are encouraged to be physical if they need to, and women are definitely not. That's the last resort for
But do you
women.
think that now that's the case now? Do you think that what do you think is happening now?
I still think it is the case that if boys are more, it's assumed that boys will get into physical fights. And that is just not acceptable for girls. Just not. I don't think that has changed.
Yeah. Well, if you think about like, I was thinking about sports and how if you look at athletes, we were looking at Tiger Woods' chart, right? Because my David's like not believing in astrology. I'm like, let's look at Tiger Woods' chart. And Tiger Woods has Mars right on top of his chart, which is this aggression, it's athleticism. And I wonder if it's why women's sports are not as popular as men's sports. Like men's sports are much more competitive. They're God, this is going to sound hard, much more aggressive, right? Versus like the way women, yeah, it's different. I mean, yes, tennis, I think is you see, I don't know. I don't know. Very interesting question. There are lots of questions to ask about all this, and it's a very touchy subject, but I do think that it's a subject that probably should be talked about more. And we should be having conversations that are really uncomfortable to understand
Right.
what it is that we believe and
Right.
why we believe it. And we're at a point with Jupiter and Gemini where we better be questioning everything we believe and why we believe it. And is
Right.
it helpful for us in the higher good of us being the best souls we can be?
Yes, I don't think it's something that we should be afraid to talk about because we're putting pressure on ourselves
But we
not
might
to
get
just,
cut off the group.
that's right. Right. We might get smeared and all of this. You know what? I'm noticing that it's
Is it time to go?
yes, getting close to time to go. And this happened so fast, Courtney, in the
I
blink
know.
of
I
an eye.
feel like we just started a conversation. I have no
I
clue what
know.
we said. I have no clue what we said. I think I talked a lot, but hopefully I didn't talk too much.
No, it was great. It was a great conversation. Really, really, pushing the boundaries, which I think is great. And I don't think we held back. And I was speaking from my heart.
Yes, and I was too. And I just love everybody. So whatever gender you are, or whatever race
Right.
you are, whatever religion you are, I love you.
Love your religion and your gender and your age and your hair color and your eye color and your weight. Love it all.
Amen. I'll see you later.